most people think that you can just walk into a bank and say, hey, I want to buy notes. And that's not the case. When
Give
I
me
was
the
a
list.
banker, I had people. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work that way. There are specific departments inside of every lender, institution out there, bank, whatever, that handles the distressed notes. So there's usually a whole different department, different building, different state, sometimes on a different side of the country.
Welcome to The Path to Wealth, the show about well-being, fulfillment, and financial freedom. And I'm your host, Hannes Henschel. Welcome back to The Path to Wealth. This week we'll be talking about how to invest in notes and distressed debt. We have the honor in welcoming Scott Carson, also known as the Note Guy. Scott has helped many investors learn about this topic through his podcast, The Note Closer Show. Scott also teaches a 3-day workshop for investors who want to learn how to find, fund, and flip non-performing notes directly from banks. Scott is the owner and managing member of We Close Notes, an Austin-based company that buys defaulted notes. It's a pleasure to have you on the show, Scott. Thanks you so much for being here.
I'm honored to be here and glad to share any path to wealth that I can help with your audience out there today.
Yeah, let's dive right in. You've been through an entire segment of different aspects of real estate before notes. Why notes over other assets in real estate?
That's a good question. I just found a niche back. If you could think back to what happened here in the United States in 2008, 9, and 10. Prior to that, in 2004, 2008, I was basically running a mortgage company. And prior to that, I was a banker, a mortgage banker with JP Morgan Chase. So I was in the finance industry and was had a mortgage that was originating notes. But one of my mentors and one of the guys that co-founded our mortgage company had made quite a bit of money during the savings and loan crisis, the distressed part of the 80s here in the United States. And when everything hit the fan and the mortgage meltdown, I mean, the music stopped in the mortgage industry almost like that overnight. And I had him and another investor of mine like, hey, Scott, you really need to take advantage of what's going on as an opportunity to control a lot of real estate without actually having to own the real estate. And so that's kind of what happened. I dove in head first, stopped doing wholesaling, fix and flipping, being a landlord, and really started buying debt back in late 2007, 8, 9, and 10. And that's really all that I focused on. That's all that I focused on for the last 15 years because of a couple things. First one is I see a lot of deals that way. Most investors are out marketing, targeting it. They might see an asset from a distressed borrower or somebody who's facing foreclosure, and that's great. Or they might buy off the MLS or out-of-state owner. That's great. But they're constantly having to market to get one deal basically from one source. I really love notes because banks are sending me lists of notes on a regular basis. Like I'm currently working on 32 notes that was a part of a list of 269 that I made offers on 60. I mean, and this list comes to me like once a quarter. So I don't have to constantly do a lot of overhead with direct mail or stuff like that. Literally, banks will send me lists of notes on a regular basis. That's the first thing I like. The second thing I liked about it is the price reductions I was getting. I was getting stuff well below 60, 50, 40 cents on the dollar than what other investors are paying. Now, I don't necessarily own the asset, but I do control the asset by buying the debt and becoming the bank. So that's the third thing that I like about it, is being able to, besides just buying it at a big discount, I'm actually controlling it and making cash flow or taking the property back if the borrower won't play ball with us. Our number one goal, Hans, is always to try to get the borrower to get back on track. Offer them a modification, a payment plan, so it turns into cash flow for us, which is what we're all looking for, right? But I don't necessarily want to deal with toilet stains and trash outs and create that job or have to do a lot of fix and flips because I'm buying in like 25, 30 states across the United States. So that's the nice thing is I can create cash flow without having to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and I can buy in multiple markets at the same time.
Yeah, got it. So you mentioned one thing in there that you don't necessarily own the asset, but you're getting into the note at a steep discount to the dollar. So how do you mitigate the risk in that for yourself?
That's a really great question. We get that all the time. And the question, how do we mitigate risk, is knowing the underlying value of that asset. Now, When I buy the note, I literally become the bank, okay? And I'm only buying first lien positions. So I'm the senior lien holder on this. And I'll give you some numbers. Let's say the borrower owes 100, the house is worth 100, and maybe they haven't paid in 6 months or a couple of years, and they may actually owe more than the house is worth. Well, I'm going to value that property in the note for exactly what the property is worth today, not what it was 2 years ago or what it will be worth maybe in 6 months or a year, but as is value. And depending on how long that borrower has gone without paying, that will reduce the value of that note. So knowing that I'm going to buy that note where if the borrower gets back on track, and that's our first thing, is reaching out and say, listen, let's get you start paying on time. I'm now your new lender. We'll work some modification agreement or payment plan with you. I'm going to make an offering. So if they do that, it turns into a very nice ROI with me. Now, I also have to assume that they're not going to pay. Many people don't want to start paying when they haven't paid for a while. That if they don't pay, then I still have the right to foreclose and take legal action to take the property back. So making sure that I'm buying, that if I have to do that and I have to do some work, I'm still going to be in a good investment to value position, so that if I do have to go through a extended foreclosure process of 12 to 18 months, I'm buying it at a better price. And that'll vary on a state-by-state basis here in the United States. Like Texas, here where I live, it's like 30 days to foreclose, actually the fastest in the country. So I might pay more for assets here in Texas because I know I can get in and get out of that asset faster. Whereas it may be in Florida, I know it's going to take me a year if I have to foreclose, so I'm going to offer a cheaper price. But there are states that I avoid, like New York, New Jersey. I won't buy up there because it takes 2 to 3 years to foreclose. You know what I mean? So, we're evaluating the asset to make sure that the value is there and that we're buying it at a good percentage, that we're going to make money if we do it one way or another. We're evaluating the borrower to see, have they paid? Have they been responsive to the existing lender or their servicing companies doing borrower outreach? We're looking at those things. And then thirdly, we're looking at the actual loan file, the collateral file like this. This is what we're looking at to see if everything's in there that still gives us the legal right to foreclose.
Yep.
And so all those things have got to match up for us to be able to say yes to it.
Yeah. You mentioned that the bank basically sends you a list, and you also mentioned that you have information like, hey, have they been previously in touch? Is that all information that they're consistently collecting, and they're making that available for you to see if this is a note that you want to make an offer on?
Yeah, usually what will happen is they'll send out an Excel spreadsheet, or we call it a tape in the industry, and it may have one asset or it may have 1,000 on there. And it's there's like 40 different cells that they do just basically a download from their servicing software. So it'll give us the first name, last name, last 12 months of payment history, sometimes last 24 months. The details of the loan, the borrower's social security number, sometimes their FICO score currently, their mailing address, and all the details of the loan. So we'll look at that, and we'll make an offer based off of some initial valuation off that spreadsheet. And if our offer is accepted, then they'll send over, like a file share where it'll have all the copies of the collateral file, the loan documents. And then I also request servicing notes so that I can see the actual transaction history of, if the borrower calling in, or if the lender been calling the borrower and trying to negotiate. Like I was just killing a deal because I see that based on the servicing notes that the lender uploaded, the borrower just made a $8,000 payment, which is good that the borrower's back on track, but not good for me because that went to the bank and they modified the loan to a term that doesn't make any sense for me. So I'm going to kill that deal because the terms don't make sense. It's good that the bank has that now, but it's not good for me because that affects my bid now.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we get to see all those things. Like I've seen hardship letters from the borrower. They've been, they tell me, whatever they send in the letter into the lender or the servicing company, I request copies of that. I've got to sign a non-disclosure agreement and that kind of things, but it gives me kind of the ideal mindset of the borrower. Do they want to stay? Do they want to go? Have they been responsive? Like I know if I see a death certificate in a loan file, I'm going to have to foreclose or work with the probate or the estate of that borrower to take the property back versus getting it back on track, unless the family wants to start making payments. And so you get to see kind of behind the screen to see what's going on with that borrower, really, versus just looking at a property.
It sounds like you're learning a lot about people, like a financial psychologist almost. You look at it and you're profiling what you're looking at the same time, trying to make sense of it, if it's a deal or not.
You are 100% correct with that. Every deal, every borrower is different in some sort of fashion. And then one of the things that we also do is we skip trace the borrower to see, where are they located, where they might be working. And we also look at their social media. We look at their Facebook or their Instagram. Can we find this person online? I've seen borrowers who send in hardship letters to the bank saying, oh, I can't pay. But on their social media, they're living it high in the hog. They're buying a new car. They're wearing brand new suits. One guy was going through a transition, just paid for his own breast implants. Another lady said, we're not going to pay our mortgage this month. We're going to go to Disney World instead. I'm like, you see a lot of the good, the bad of people but here's the thing. Majority of people want to pay their mortgage on time. They want to stay in their house. They do want to do the right thing. But you still have that, 5-10% that really want to try. If you give them an inch, they try to take a mile, try to take advantage of the system. And you've just got to, this is why I always say it's good to have a third party handle those tough conversations, a third party like an attorney or servicing company. Because if you hear people talk about, their heartstrings, or I'm sick, or my 12th grandmother passed away, you want to be nice and do something nice, but sometimes people know the game and know the racket and can drag things out for a long period of time.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the bank basically sends you a list. How do you build those relationships where you get to a point that they send you a list and you're not looking at single potential deals?
That's a really good question too. So most people think that you can just walk into a bank and say, hey, I want to buy notes. And that's not the case. When I was a banker, I had people, yeah, exactly. It doesn't work that way. There are specific departments inside of every lender, institution out there, bank, whatever, that handles the distressed notes. So there's usually in a whole different department, different building, different state, sometimes on a different side of the country. And those departments, they go by a couple names, like the Special Assets Department, the Secondary Marketing Department, the Chief Credit Risk Officer for a smaller bank. If it's an insurance company or a real estate investment trust, they may go by a whole loan trader desk. And we have built relationships by just continuing to follow up. You've heard drip marketing. We go out and we find lists of these people on LinkedIn is a great place to look for, and we just start reaching out to them. Hey, are you the right person at ABC Bank? Are you the right person at Signature Bank who's going through a bank failure this morning? Are you looking to move anything off your books that you're looking to get rid of? And so it's just a matter of constantly reaching out to these people and doing it on really a methodical way on a weekly basis, building an email list, and then we send an email out once to twice a month to the same list and just follow up. Hey, what do you have in your books this month? Or what are you looking to get rid of this quarter? There are some things that you can look at to identify banks that have a higher percentage of distressed assets, like looking at their quarterly report that they file with the FDIC will often show what kind of distressed assets they have. There's a service called Bauer Financial that we use that sends us a quarterly report with all the bank's filings that shows us what kind of percentage of defaults they have. Another good sign is if that bank or institution is hiring for people in their distressed department. And like last month, there was 120 institutions on LinkedIn alone that said they were hiring for special asset managers, which is a good sign that they've got an increasing number of bad loans that they need to get off their books. So we do that, and we just, like I said, we just follow up. Sometimes it's making a phone call, but usually it's LinkedIn or an email and then a follow-up with a phone call, and just continue to touch base with them. Hey, what do you have in your books this quarter? Some banks, they don't want to deal with a smaller, I guess you'd say smaller investor. They want to deal with a big institution, so they may send it to a website like DebtX or First Financial to sell off in their pool. I might be a big fish in a small pool. I mean, we're still buying. I bought over $1 billion in debt in the last 15 years, and we've bought anywhere from a one-off note to 300 notes at a time. But we're still buying on a regular basis. And so while we might not take down $1 billion pool, we're still buying quite a few assets, whether from a one-off deal to 30, 40, 50, 60 assets at a time right now. So it's just a matter of touching base. Hey, what do you have? And then following up. Some banks will sell stuff we made 60 offers last month, 30 were accepted. Out of that 30, we'll probably end up closing on 15. Well, I'll continue to follow up on the other 30 that we didn't get accepted to say, hey, what happened with those? Did they close out? Are they still available? And that also leads to getting deals. And oftentimes that leads to asset managers knowing that once we close on something, if something falls out, we're the first ones to see stuff because we've got a proven track record of closing on deals.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and you also keep an eye on the ball. I mean, you're proactively following up, which means if something falls out, you're the first to pick it up. And you said something there which strikes timely, that there is a lot of banks hiring in those positions. And I think that kind of speaks to the market situation. I mean, we just seen some banks default just last week, basically, and which speaks to their books. And you said that they want to get rid of certain debts on their books. So the bank, really wants to pass that on to you, and that's the opportunity where people like you move in, right?
That's correct. They would rather get, like, say, 50 cents of value now because they can now have that as a cash deposit and then lend that money out or leverage it, versus holding on to a non-performing note that's not generating any income. And then it's an opportunity for me and other investors because, hey, we bought this deal at a 50% discount. Now we can work it out. We can get more creative with the borrowers. Or if not, we are more comfortable foreclosing and taking that asset back if we need to.
Yeah. And I think this is really interesting because it's a part of the banking business that is less obvious. Obviously, they don't want their customers to know about it, that they're writing off bad debt like that and trying to clear their books.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, banks don't want you to know that they're struggling, okay? Because it leads to what we saw happen on Friday with Silicon Bank. What's led to what's going on in New York with Signature Bank closing their doors on Sunday. Now, it's nice that the president's come in and said, oh, your deposits will be secured. Well, they can't do that for every bank in trouble. And that's, I hate to say this, but those are really the first two dominoes to start falling. Because there's banks out there that are struggling, and it's not just because of the Bitcoin debacle with FTX that happened with Silicon Valley Bank. That was a big thing in the high-tech side of things. Or, Signature Bank having some other bad things happen to it. There's banks don't want to run on their assets because then it reduces the value of the assets overall, all across the board. So you'll have a bank that comes in and buys another bank, and they'll have to do what's called a loss share agreement where they can't sell those banks' assets for at least a year. They've got to hold it to stabilize it. Then, even though they bought those assets at a big discount, they've got to wait a year to sell that asset off at a discount if they want to make profit on that. So it that gives it time to stabilize the bank, stabilize the deposits, and go from there. But yeah, we usually have to sign non-disclosure agreements with the banks. Can't disclose who we're buying from, or can't go out and post, hey, we're buying this note at 123 Main Street by ABC Bank. That's a big no-no. For 50 cents on the dollar. Plus, you never want the borrower, not that the borrower is paying attention, but you don't want the borrower to see somewhere like, oh, you just sold my note for 50 cents on the dollar. I don't want to pay you 100 cents on the dollar. You only bought it for 50. I said, well, just the fact that I bought it for 50 doesn't stop you from owning the full amount.
Yeah. I have a question, and this is something that got raised in my circle today, because given the whole bank debacle, and you might or might not have a good answer to this, it's like you seem to have a good understanding of what is in the books, at least as long as they deal with real estate mortgages. How do we evaluate if our bank is healthy? That's
a good question. And it's really easy to see every bank that is federal has an FDIC insurance. That means where their deposits, anything up to $250,000 are insured in case the bank fails. So those banks that have that type of insurance, they have to file a quarterly report every quarter with the FDIC. So you can literally go to fdic.gov and search for your bank's quarterly report. And they will literally show what kind of percentage, what do they have under assets under management, how much of it is in default, what percentage of the bank's assets are in default, how's it broken down into commercial assets, residential assets, unsecured loans, secured loans, credit card debt. They'll have that all disclosed there, and you can kind of see how much is in default this quarter, but they also have to give you what's basically in distress that's 30 to 89 days late coming down the pipeline for the next quarter. So you can literally, it's free to do. You can go to fdic.gov and just pull up any bank and take a look at it, as long as it's here in the United States.
Nice. I didn't know about that. And that's because today we were sitting there as real estate syndicators, and we also need to make sure that we're not exposed to systemic like concerns here. Whatever might go
Yep.
down in the next couple months or year, and we were like, okay, so how do we evaluate if our banks are good? Like,
Well, I would call your banker. I would call your banker, whoever your representative is at the bank, especially if you're a syndicator. They should know, hey, what other percentage of your commercial loans are in default or distress? Do you have anything that's in special servicing, that the borrower is struggling to make payments? I would also look at how many of their existing loans have they gone back to the borrowers on, say, hey, we need to get your debt service coverage ratio back in a ratio. We need you to bring cash to the table to get it to 1.25, or we need to get back to, the values have dropped a little bit, so you need to bring 5 to 10% of the value of the property to get it back to 70% LTV.
yeah.
So those are some questions I would be asking. Hey, do you have anything else on your books that's in trouble? You might be looking to get rid of. They might not be able to disclose the asset or the borrower, but they can tell you some of those numbers.
Yeah. So you're also mentoring a lot of students. You consistently have workshops that are filled. How do you usually help them understand this like niche within the niche? I mean, I already think that we are in a niche doing what we're doing, but you're even deeper in it. How do people find you, approach this? And how do you help them make sense of all of this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. One of the things that we do is obviously we have the podcast, the Note Closer Show. We're constantly uploading, releasing episodes. Like I just finished recording a new episode a few minutes ago, just talking about what's going on in the market today. We do that on Monday nights for the last 13 years. We've held a live webinar that's called Note Night in America, where we go through different topics and bring in different speakers and in the commercial space, the residential space, and help them kind of make sense of it. And then with our workshops, we kind of have a two-level approach to it. We've got like a one-day class that we teach is kind of the note basics. We call it Note Weekend, where it's basically about 6 hours of me kind of going through the basics of how we find these deals, how we fund them, and how we make money with them, how we flip these things. And then if people go through that one day and they're like, oh, this doesn't seem that complicated. It's actually, this business is a simple business. It's not anything complicated. It's doing a lot of the same things over and over again. It's just a different mindset and different shift being a banker's mindset versus a fix and flipper's mindset. So that's really one of the things that we really have to focus with folks. Like, listen, you're not a fix and flipper. You're not a realtor. You're more of a bank on the situation. So you have to take it from that approach and realize just because you're buying the note doesn't mean you're automatically end up with a property. You may end up having a great performing loan, or you may have to go through the legal process. So there's a lot of moving parts to that. And so that's why the 3-day is all more so a full day on how we find these deals and what's going on in the market, how to make those connections with asset managers, what to say, what not to say. The second day is all about the raising capital, because and how to market these deals, because there's a different type of marketing and capital raise than it is for going out and getting a loan or a hard money loan for a property. And then thirdly, the exit strategies and how to break down these tapes that we get in. How do we determine a note as a deal or a dud? Based on the property, the borrower, the buying conditions or the paying habits of the borrower or not, and going from there. And what's going on with each state, because each state's a little bit different in the foreclosure process. So there's a lot of moving parts, but we always tell folks, like, listen, narrow it down 3 to 5 states, and let's start there, and you'll get much more knowledgeable as you grow from there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And don't go to New York.
Yeah, don't buy in New York or New Jersey. Don't buy in Chicago. I could go on a few other places, but that's half the battle, is knowing not to where to buy.
Yeah. And when you are helping people making sense of this, where do you find or raise the capital? Do you go to retail investors in a similar fashion we do it in the syndication space?
Yeah, we do that. We definitely depend on what you're buying and how much you're buying. We work with a lot of self-directed IRA investors. Self-directed IRA money here in the United States. People that have an IRA account. We show people, hey, reach out to these IRA investors. They've got money. They're looking for deals that are often passive. And you can see they've pulled the trigger because they own a property already in their IRA, or they've lent money out of their IRA. So if you can offer them, 6 to 8% passive return without them having to do any work for a period of time, it can be a great investment, as long as you're buying below 70% of value and You've got your servicing company and your attorneys there to help you take these assets down, where you're not having to do all the work yourself. So yeah, we show people how to raise capital that way, how to market to investors, and help them to use their own. They can use their own money, but it's always best to use other people's money and save your own money for the really, really good deals.
Yep. What is the structure between you as someone who is running the deal and us potential passive investors?
Are you talking about how the setup as far as the breakdown of the returns, or what do you mean as far as when my students
both.
And me?
Yeah.
Okay. So usually, I'm buying most of the time. I don't usually partner with people. I'll partner with investors. If an investor brings $250,000 or more to the table, we'll do a special purpose LLC, and then we'll usually split the profits, 50-50 after expenses are paid, stuff like that. But if somebody's bringing in 50 or 100 grand to get the ball rolling, we can do 1 or 2 notes with them, and they'll get a flat 6 to 8% return for 24 to 36 months, and we'll handle the management on our side. And of course, they've got access to all of our notes and the servicing and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, makes sense. Very nice. So, for people that are trying to wrap their head around this space, where would you send them first? You mentioned your podcast. You mentioned your mentorship. What's the website where people can reach you?
Really easy. WeCloseNotes.com. That's our mothership website with access to our different podcasts and our training. WeCloseNotes.com is the best place to go for that kind of stuff. I've got a book, and we got a pretty easy 72-page book. I'd be glad to send somebody if they want to learn how to dive into the world of note investing. We give that away for free. Love to, for your audience, somebody who's interested, I mentioned our one-day class that we have called Note Weekend. If you go to noteweekend.com and register and use the discount code, we'll just say PATH, all caps, PATH. I'll give you that class for free, which is a $99 value, and you can kind of dip your toes in the water, see if it's something you like. If not, no biggie. If it's something you like, hey, we'll take the next step.
Nice. I like it. I have one question that I always like to ask. What do you consider a life well lived?
Ooh, a life well lived. It answers itself. You know what I mean? Doing what you want when you want. You know what I mean? I saw a meme today from Gary Vaynerchuk, and he talked about how he's got friends making 45 grand a year who are happy. They live their life. They're watching movies, doing what they want, take 2 vacations, they scrap together. They're happy. And then he's got friends that make millions that are just unhappy. They're the most miserable soul, dark soul out there. I think a life well lived is doing what you want when you want. It's not saying always doing everything you want to do. You got to get up sometimes when you want to sleep in, but being able to call your own shots. And it doesn't, whatever that number is. And that's one of the things that we always tell our students, like, listen, if you're working and you want to replace your income, let's replace your income so that you don't have to work if you don't want to. But if you want to keep working, that's great. But let's put a plan together so you can leave that job, not quit overnight, but let's put a 12 or 24 month plan in place to replace your income so that you are financially. So if you do want to take a month off or 2 months off to travel or stuff like that, you're good. Financial independence is often something that goes along with that number, but that number is independent of everybody. So just because somebody needs 20 grand a month to survive, somebody who's needs 2 grand and living out of their van, driving all across the country, might just be the happiest person out there. So it's all about individual choices, individual definition of that is what I like to say.
100%. I think that's very much, people need to define their own success. But I think it's also something that they have to learn for themselves, because it's so easy to, especially we're being catered to by ads and all kinds of things. This is success. This is what success means. And I mean, just 2 weeks ago, some Wall Street billionaire shot himself. So I wonder what his idea of success was and what made him kill himself.
Well, that's the biggest thing. You see that happen all the time. We here in the United States, we have it so ass backwards a lot of time compared to Europe and other countries out there where we work 80 hours a week. We only get like 2 weeks of vacation a year. We work ourselves to death to try to end up retiring to go ahead in time. That's so ass backwards compared to, Spain and Portugal and Latin America and Germany and all these others. You got to have time to recharge your batteries. Working yourself to death doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And you look at here in the United States, the amount of obesity, people not taking care of themselves. You got to take care of the most important thing. That's you and your family first and foremost. And that doesn't mean working 80 hours a week and killing yourself to make an extra buck. Money is great, but you can't take it with you when you die. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's one of the things my dad taught me is like, hey, make memories along the way, because you can't take all that money when you're 6 feet under the ground. Maybe great for your family, but your family would obviously exchange all the money in the world to spend more time with you one-on-one.
100%, 100%. And especially, if you trade your health in the process for the money, then at the end of your health, you would give away all the money again.
Yeah, that's why you always see these guys that are always trying to live longer. Well, you should have lived while you were younger anyway.
Yeah, right.
Gray hair is not a bad thing if it's full of life experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, right. Yes, if you didn't get stuck. So what is one of the projects that you're currently pushing on? Something where you're personally trying to take it to the next level. Something you're passionate about.
So it's funny that we're speaking about health, because I've been very, very passionate about my health, especially the last year or two since I turned 45. I really wanted to get my weight down. I'm back in, working out. I'm watching what I eat. I just actually came back from my doctor's checkup today, and she gave me a high five that all my numbers were way down in really great optimal positions. Weight's down, blood pressure's down, blood sugar's way down, all that good stuff. So that's the biggest thing is taking better care of myself. Secondly, getting out and traveling a little bit more. I used to travel a lot prior to COVID, and vacations at least twice a year usually, and stuff like that. So really, really looking forward to get back out and traveling a little bit more and enjoying ourselves. Getting back over to Europe and spend some time over there.
Yeah, nice. Summer is coming up. Should come over.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I was in Germany years ago for the 19th annual Greater Berlin Beer Festival, and I've never seen more happy people. Beer troughs and beer carts, a mile long down the middle of Berlin. It was a great time. Everybody having a good time. It wasn't Oktoberfest. It was June or July and stuff like that. It was a great time there.
Yeah. Well, Oktoberfest is a must visit at some point. I think it's quite a unique experience. There's nothing like it outside of Munich.
Yeah, exactly. Like we were talking beforehand, that's got to be on the list of 10 there.
Yeah. Well, Scott, thank you so much for your time. This has been very, very interesting. Notes for everybody, that's in the multifamily syndication space already. This is something else to look at for us. And Scott has all the information. He has the mentorship, and the podcast. So everybody, let's dive right in.
Well, hey, man, thank you so much for being on here. And for those of you guys that are listening to this podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a 5-star review here. Hans is doing just a great job kicking ass and taking names with this podcast. And we as podcasters always love to hear from our audience. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and leave a 5-star review telling him how awesome of a job he's doing.
Thank you for joining us at The Path to Wealth. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Check out our upcoming guests and be sure to share it with all your friends and family that want to take their life to the next level of wealth.